Hey guys, tonight we start with a river breathing fog into cool air and a small, deliberate circle of sticks and stones pressed into damp soil, where you kneel with ash on your palms and a steadying heartbeat that belongs as much to the embers as to you, and you realize you are awake in a world that does not know houses yet stand still. Somehow, you are about to help build one. You crouch in the hush before birdsong, and it's almost funny how quickly your modern comforts dissolve. No pillow, no switch, no door, and you probably won't survive this, but you're curious enough to try. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you are and what time it is. There I want to picture your night or morning while we share this fire. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ground is cold and textured under your knees, coarse sand dotted with silt, flecked with tiny shells and plant husks. A faint glitter of quartz in the first light of dawn. The air tastes like wet stone and faint charcoal. It smells of river mud and crushed reeds and something animal, not new, but not old enough to ignore. You extend a careful breath toward a thin red smolder in the ash, cupping your hands like a shelter you haven't built yet, and a small tongue of flame answers you, shy and quick. Your body registers contrasts faster than your mind. The heat licking your knuckles, the chill on your calves where dew-soaked grasses brushed before you stepped into this pocket of earth, the way the soil gives under your toes and then holds. Behind you, shapes stir your band's soft rustles of hide and grass mat, a whisper of palm on wood, the small cough of someone learning their breath again. You are not alone. That is the first shelter. The band is small, fewer than a dozen gaps. In a shallow bend where reeds form a windbreak, and a scrim of brush keeps unwanted eyes from counting you too easily. In the gloom, you can make out roles more than faces. The elder with the coal's memory hands, who always wakes with fires, to-do list already sorted, the quick-eyed youngster who can spot a fish's fin flick like it's a message, the broad-shouldered toolmaker whose knuckles carry the polish of stone, the wary middle sleeper who rises at every twig snap because some part of him never left the night watch. You fold into their pattern with both humility and appetite. There's a rhythm here. Breathe, tend, look, gather, test, share, build, rest, guard. The river, down a brush tunnel of damp stems and spider silk, waits with its ledger of thin ripples and pale reflections. You step toward it, letting slender leaves comb your shins. The scent shifts from ash warm to green cool, and a low humming of insects becomes audible like a quiet motor behind everything. Mud records what mouths forget, the starry pads of a hyena from hours ago, the tight crescents of a small antelope, the slide of a heavy belly that could be crocodile or logdiday. You choose crocodile and step with your weight ready to retreat. You press a fingertip into silt, and it remembers you, too. You feel suddenly responsible for the mark you leave. You are Homo habilis today, or close to it, the handy human who turns river stones into edges, and edges into food, who favors a patch of reeds and brush and calls it home until hunger drafts a new map. Your arms are long by modern standards. Your hands proportioned for power and precision, both. Your legs are shorter, tuned for scrambling and squatting. Your feet broad, and honest about terrain. Your face, caught briefly in the river's early mirror, looks familiar enough to unsettle you. Heavy brow, yes, but eyes that run quick calculations. A mouth made for roots and marrow and questions. Immediate challenge arrives the way it always does here, quietly, with the hunger that simply insists. You feel it as a light pressure under the ribs and a prickle of attention in your mouth. Breakfast is not a category. It is a sequence. You drag your palm over the water to taste its chill and read its speed. Then you wade knee-deep where your toes find firmness between stones. The youngster waits with a forked stick angled into a channel where minnows swirl. You hold still, you wait, you try to match the river's patience, and when the small school drifts your way like a rumor, the stick snaps upward, and two silver bodies slap onto the mud with a sound that declares their brief surprise. You grin because the sound feels like applause you didn't deserve, and partly did. Quirky fact. Clay smeared lightly on skin takes the shine off it, less glare, fewer curious eyes. You don't call it camouflage yet, but once the clay dries, insects find you less interesting, which, here, is a kind of compliment. You pull a pale tuber from beneath a knotted mat of roots by working a flake blade under it, teasing it free with the same gentle stubbornness that will later convince a branch to stay part of a wall. The smell is clean dirt with a hint of sweetness. You know it will taste better after ash. And the difference between raw and roasted is the difference between getting by and getting on. You fold tubers in a leaf, tuck them to your chest, and step back toward the hearth you've begun to believe in. The space you call camp is a negotiation with wind and convenience. Reeds form a natural wall. Fallen branches lean into a curve. Two deliberate lines of stones define the heart of Ithafire's ring, and a second little arc where sparks don't wander. You lay fish on green twigs above coals, tubers into shallow ash pockets marked by a single pebble each, and the air reshapes itself around these small decisions, carrying a scent that is both invitation and warning. The elder moves through this as if guiding a slow, invisible animal adjusting a log, leftover embers mused into a quieter breath. A handful of aromatic leaves crushed and laid on the windward side, so mosquitoes choose elsewhere tonight. Action sharpens when the tracker raises a palm from the reeds and tilts it once, the sign for look, but do not yet move. Out on the open mud, vultures begin to spiral and then drop, patient and entitled. That means what it always means. Something has died within walking distance, and the day might become larger than clams and fish. You do not celebrate, you stand. You rewrap your ember bundle for transport, and you check your edges. A recently shaped core flake, still keen. A larger chopper, good for splitting. A battered hammerstone that has been an old friend longer than the season. You touch the tools the way some later people touch keys before leaving a locked apartment, feeling their weight as a promise and a plan. You move downwind through grass that sighs in soft resistance against your thighs, the sun's first convincing warmth soaking into shoulders and scalp. Birds mark your passing with small, disapproving clicks. A lizard scours up a trunk and freezes, a punctuation mark you decide not to read. The smell of meat arrives before the sight sweet and iron, damp at the edges, and you slow without speaking, without thinking. The band knows how to shrink its sound. Steps get lighter, mouths close, breath flattens. You crest a low bank of gravel, and there it is, a zebra, or what's left. With hide peeled away like a curtain mid-show, ribs bright and beautiful in their architecture. Hyena prints, cat scrapes, the mess of someone else's earlier needs. Still, the long bones are here, and bones are vaults that open if you know the combination. You do. The hammerstone answers ribs with a timbre that feels like judgment until it gives, and the closer bones announce themselves. You settle, heal, aim, strike, and a joint pops with that intimate, unpleasant sound that means success and gentleness both you take, but you take quickly, cleanly. A shard of marrow slips into the elder's hand. She puts it to the mouth of the smallest among you first, and your stomach smiles at the fairness of it. You pocket a length of tendon with your new flake, and imagine it as binding light. I will make a loop, then a knot, then a line that holds when wind has questions. Relief comes in small, edible forms. You back away in that sideways crab step that keeps vulnerability off your profile and your heart close to your bones. You do not compete with hyenas. You schedule around them. You leave quiet, carrying protein and gratitude, and by the time you are within reed-whispered distance of camp again, your body has already begun to invest marifat into calm. A bit more patience for the spear practice that always humbles you. A bit more softness in your shoulders when the youngster misses the next fish and winces like the river will write him up for the mistake. Back at camp, the tubers have softened and sweetened, and the fish skins buckle into a crisp you would call indulgence, if that word fit here. You pass the bites by a social math that always feels fair enough. Need, plus effort, plus age, plus ritual. The elder slips a piece of roasted root to a companion whose ankle is swollen to a stubborn map of yesterday's misstep. You see how a single ember-warmed stone under a hide can be both medicine and metaphor. We keep each other. You clean your flake with sand and a dip of water, and the grit sets your teeth on edge in a way that reminds you you're lucky to have those teeth at all. Now, the building. You don't say house, not with a roof and rights and memory pinned to one address. But you are about to draw a line against wind and teeth and weather, and that is what a house begins as. You look for what the ground offers first. A shallow arch in the reeds, where pressure and storm made a bow to saplings that lean cooperatively toward each other. A scatter of stones that can anchor ends. You walk the perimeter once, in your mind, hear the wind, there the smoke, there the sleep, there the step. You do not stumble in the dark. Then you begin. You plant forked sticks as posts, and weave thinner branches through the pattern, more basket than wall, more pliable than proud. You bring the curve down low, because height is a future luxury, and now is a roof that doesn't argue with gusts. You smear mud into gaps, not to seal completely but to soften wind to a hum. You consider smoke how it will wander out instead of down. You leave a slatted space near the top that looks accidental and is not. The youngster learns by copying. Twist the stems, tuck the ends, press the clumps, weave, so the wall moves with the day instead of against it. Quirky fact: a single smeared line of dung along a wall's lower edge does more than gross you out. It slows insects and stiffens mud. The smell fades faster than the benefit. which is the kind of bargain this landscape respects. You stand back, and the shelter looks like the land, forgiving you a small presumption. A ring of stones low against its windward foot prevents the base from eroding when rain tries to persuade it elsewhere. A hide draped over the leeward gap makes a door that isn't one. The fire you have coaxed all morning goes briefly, bright as you feed it thin, dry stems. Then you bank it against Mall is safer, more invisible, kinder to stores that are not endless. The first test is always the sit-down. You slide inside, shoulders just not brushing both sides, knees drawn. The bread-warm smell of mud and fresh cut plant rises like reassurance. It is not a fortress. It is a conditional promise. You step out to the spear practice zone, which is a stump with a knot that looks too much like an eye to be comfortable. Your shoulder resets its role. Your fingers find the pressure that means you won't release early. The first throw wobbles and kisses the stump with a poutant, satisfying but honest. The second slips too far left and lies in grass like it meant to nap there. Third thunks pleasingly shallow, and your smile is not performative, it is private. The toolmaker watches with the kind of indifference that is actually approval, not wanting attention. You recover all 3 shafts because scarcity is your math teacher. A shadow wavers, big cat. No, it is only your own indecision, feeling large against the read line. Still, the band shifts back into alert posture just enough. One person elevates the ember cup so it won't stumble from a sudden move. Another lifts an ear and an eyebrow. The elder's hand drifts to the child's shoulder with a pressure that says, 2 heartbeats closer to me. Your house is a better place to sit because you can see from it. That is the measure of any shelter worth carrying in your mind. One quirky or fringe to listen. Some swear that humming a low note as you twist a chord helps the fibers marry better, as if rhythm rearranged their tiny attention. Show me your best hum, you think, and then you do it anyway. And when the chord holds under tension later, you pretend causation and feel very clever. Historians still argue whether the earliest circles of stones and post holes and trodden rings are huts or merely repeated camp spots with tidied fires. The truth on this side of the evidence is not an argument. You plant branches, you weave grass, you reinforce with mud, you align an opening with how the wind tends to behave, and you sleep more deeply than you did last night. Tomorrow, this might be gone storm, or trampling, or a decision made by hunger. But tonight, it is something you can knock on and be answered by sound. Dusk tilts the light, sugared and soft. The insects tune their wires higher. Frogs begin to count time in clicks. Something heavy moves far away with the confidence of weight and ownership. You cook a fraction of the leftover fish to scent the evening. You set aside a few cooked pieces on a warmed, flat stone so that someone waking in the deepest dark with hunger can put a bite in their mouth without putting their feet in risk. You show the youngster how to bank the fire for the night. A lattice of thicker wood over coal, ash pulled across like a blanket, a small vent kept open like a mouth breathing. The night watch is a posture more than a role. You sit near the low doorway with your legs crossed and your spear lying like a quiet sentence across your knees. The reed walls creak softly as air changes temperature. The mud settles inch by inch, molecule by molecule, into tighter friendship with the woven frame. You hear hyena laughter, far to the right, two voices, mismatched, one older. A leopard coughs once, and stops, and your skin flinches because that sound is a punctuation mark your species learned before it learned chalk. The elder places a warm stone near the swollen ankle and shifts the hide so draft avoids the child's head. You think not of tomorrow, but of the next 2 breaths and the next 3 tiny decisions that keep the circle intact. Sleep is not a lake to plunge into. It is a shallow, slow stream you lie down in with your ears above the surface. You arrange yourselves so overlapping sightlines cover what walls cannot. Your shelter becomes more than materials, it becomes the choreography of bodies at rest and nerves slightly awake. The stars open theirs in answer, and for a breath, your chest loosens as if constellations are people you know before your eyes fully close. You let curiosity place a marker on a far horizon. There will be other shelters, and better ones, circles of stone that won't roll, frames that take snow without weeping, pits that hold fire in place like a seated elder, walls that remember wind instructions over seasons. For now, the reed smell, the mud cool against your wrist, the slow hiss of banked coals are all the architecture you need. Dark, a hoof taps once, a test or a thought. You answer by not moving at all. You sleep and wake and sleep again, a tide. The shelter breathes with you as it dries. The world remains dangerous just enough to be honest, and merciful just enough to keep you close. When morning decides to exist, you'll be ready to read fresh mud and old bones and wind shape, and to call this place home a second day, or not. That too is a human choice, beginning right here, under a roof you made from grass and nerve. The night's last embers shift under their blanket of ash as the breath of the river finds them. You feel that change in your skin before you even move, a faint warmth escaping upward, a coolness brushing the curve of your neck where the hide has slipped. There is a thin seam of light at the horizon, not pink yet, just pale, as though the sun is listening before it steps forward. Your shelter wall creaks softly. Dew gathers along the reed fibers and falls in silent drops to the packed earth floor. You stretch, not all at once, but in quiet segments, mindful not to knock the hide door aside too quickly. The world before your eyes adjust is a smear of formstone, matte ember glow, the outline of a shoulder near the nearest fire. The hush is not true silence. Beneath it are threads, a frog's low bubble, the tick of cooling wood, the wet rustle of something rooting in the river grass. You slip outside. The ground cups your footprints in cold, wet impressions that darken the soil. The air smells of clay and faint fish oil land, that sharper mineral scent of stone, no longer part of the ground, but worked by a hand. When you pass the hearth, you crouch and blow gently into its heart. The gray shifts, a line of orange threads outward. One dark twig brightens along its edge, ready to catch. A breath more, and the flame stands on its own. You angle toward the river, your bare feet tasting every rise and dip. The path is narrow, brushed in on each side by tall sedge, its tips bending with drops so fat they fall into your hair if you're not careful. Spider silk clings to your forearm. You don't wipe it away. In the half-light, the water gleams like shaped metal. The sound of it is softer now than in the rainy season, a steady body sliding over shallows and then deepening by the bend. The mud at the edge is still storytelling from the night. The neat double line of a steps careful not to break the crust. The wide, round track of buffalo, dew still pooled in its center. A scatter of lighter claw marks, perhaps otter, perhaps something else that only passed through. Your fingertips press into one print. The damp beneath is cool, younger than your dreams. There is no fresh trace of crocodile slide here, but you keep an easy space between yourself and the deeper water, all the same. A stir upstream draws your eyes. The younger one, already knee-deep, has wedged 2 lengths of wood into the channel, making a triangle. The fish will find easy to enter and harder to leave. You wade to join them, the water clutching at your calves in slow pulls. Together you settle the last brace, then go still. The morning lengthens behind you, but here in the shallows, time knots itself around the silver shapes darting in low light. The strike happens quickly, an elbow flick, a hand closing, the bright slap of a body hitting mud. The younger one grins wider than the horizon. You choose your moment, a flicker of movement just upstream, and scoop fast. 1 fish in each hand, both writhing until you press them to grass. You breathe out, and only now notice your own grin. Quirky fact: the slime coating of fresh caught fish conceal fine cracks in woven containers. If you smear it while still wet, the weave shrinks tighter as it dries. Not pleasant to smell, but clever to know. Back in camp, the elder is arranging today's cookfire. Last night's embers still perform their slow work. A scatter of twigs and dry leaf curls, and the flames rise with hardly a complaint. You lay the fish out, then step toward the reed wall where yesterday's tubers are heaped undercool, dry as bones. 2 in your arm, their skins still clinging to bits of root thread. The old woman nods once, her eyes already on the smokes. Line, adjusting it with a hand that knows wind better than most eyes. From where you sit to clean the catch, you can see the shelter frames silvered by dawn. The woven reeds are beaded with water. Droplets swell and fall, darkening the earth where they land. Some parts sag ever so slightly, the work of today. A simple push to reshape, fresh grass to rebind. The smell here is strong, damp earth, plant oil, a faint animal sweetness from the hides. It is unmistakably your place in the world, for as long as the river agrees, you eat with the others, slowly. Fish flesh, soft, still steaming, tuber sweetened by the ash roast, skin charred enough to peel away in strips. Conversation is more gesture than voice and exhale. A glance, a tilt of head. Enough to agree that the morning's hunt will be no farther than the eastern flats, where grazing signs thickened yesterday and shade can be found before the sun reaches its fiercest. The air begins to shift, a subtle lifting of coolness as the sun edges higher. You stand, brushing the dirt from your hands, and sling a small reed basket across your shoulder, not empty, but prepared to be less empty. The younger one trails close, carrying a narrow stick with one end sharpened, though its edge is more enthusiasm than efficiency. The elder watches without stopping her work, the way someone counts your steps without numbers. The path eastward skirts the line, where mud yields to coarse sand, then rises to firmer ground, dotted with knots of wiry grass. Each tuft hides small lives, beetles that clatter sideways, crickets flexing themselves into the air in sudden arcs. Your eyes start to separate movement into three truths: what you can eat, what can eat you, and what is simply part of everything else. A flash of movement ahead freezes you both. Not predator fast, more like the nervous skip of an animal built to vanish. You motion low with your hand, and the youngster crouches, eyes wide, breath quick. Through the grass, a pair of dik-dik antelope nose at the earth, their ears swiveling like small, soft dishes catching invisible sound. They are close enough that you can see their flanks pushing and pulling with breath. You let the moment be, neither stalking nor startling them. Food, yes, but not today, not without a plan to match that speed. Eventually, they lift their heads, give the air a testing twitch of their nostrils, and spring away as if the earth had rejected them. The ground tells other stories. A scatter of droppings still moist enough to hold faint steam. A track angled toward the flats. The crescent marks in pairs, betraying a three-toed foot. Guinea fowl maybe, big enough for a meal. You file it away, continuing on until the scent of crushed sage drifts up from where your step broke a low stem. For a moment, you stand still just to breathe it in. The flats open suddenly, a tawny space ringed in the distance with darker green. There is movement in the shade, shapes slow and deliberate, grazing. Through narrowed eyes, you read them. Waterbuck, maybe half a dozen, with the heavy lines of shoulders built for pushing through thick brush. They are at the edge of your reach, in both time and purpose. You kneel, sweep a hollow in the sand with the edge of your palm, and set the basket down. The younger one mirrors you, though without understanding why. You wait, letting the herd's patterns print themselves into your mind. Step, head down, flick of tail, pause, ears lift, repeat. Quirky fact, the faint S curve many grazers trace as they chew through a patch isn't random. It keeps their eyes sweeping for danger, even as their mouths work. You've learned to read the curve, to guess how soon they'll lift their heads. You decide against a hunt here. The wind is wrong, and the shade will pull them deeper soon. Instead, you walk toward the nearer stand of acacia, where beads of sap cling like amber tears along the bark. You press a finger to one and roll it between thumb and forefinger, sticky, fragrant, slow to let go. It will be useful later for binding a broken tool handle, sealing a stitch in a water pouch, or simply to carry the clean, sharp scent in your nose on long, dull walks. One mainstream fact to listen: the stone flake in your belt, light enough to forget until you need it, is part of the oldest tool set used by your kind. These old Dowan flakes have been made for well over 1 million years, their edges bringing down distance between hunger and answer with the simplest of actions, one stone against another. On the way back, you keep to the river's higher edge. The view is longer here, water shining below like stretched skin, reeds bowing and straightening against the current's pull. The basket grows heavier with bulbs pulled from softened banks, leaves that will steam well under hot stones. A pale bird with long legs paces you for a moment along the waterline, then veers off with a single, deliberate wing beat. Camp is quieter when you return. A few are still away, checking the smaller pools for trapped fish or frogs. The elder squats by the fire, coaxing a denser bed of coals. You lay the morning's gathering where the shade will keep it cool until needed. The younger slides down beside you, talking in gestures about the dik-dik, tracing their tiny horns in the air. You nod, because the story matters as much as the hunt. You turn your eyes toward the sky's edge, reading the lean of light for how much safe hour remains before shadow brings other hunters awake. There's still time to repair the reed walls before the sun peaks. And you know that while the work will smell of wet plant and clay, it will feel like the slow tightening of the camp's skin, necessary, invisible to anyone who doesn't sleep inside it tonight. You begin with the smallest gap, where to reed bundles meet but do not agree. Kneeling, you press fresh stalks, green and pliant, into the weave, twisting them just enough to catch on the older, drier stems. The scent rises immediately, fresh cut, wet, sweet, and clings to your fingers. Clay is waiting in a palm-sized lump at your side, dug from the river bend where it hides under a layer of sand. You smear it along the join, pushing it deep into the weave with the heel of your hand until it fills the night's work of wind. The younger one brings more reeds without being asked. You can smell their excitement more than see it, the quickening of their breath as they set each bundle at your knee. Together, you edge along the shelter's curve, repairing sag and tear. The quiet shapes around you go about their own routines. The toolmaker sits cross-legged, reshaping a flake's edge. The elder coaxes the fire into a low, even burn, ideal for slow cooking. From somewhere upstream, faint splashes announce that the fishing party is still at work. When the wall feels whole under your palm, you sit back and scan for places where light scythes through too freely. A shadowed interior is cooler, safer, more hidden from the eyes that matter. You fill those too, satisfied when the woven lattice reads as a single surface instead of a patchwork as you work. The smells of cooking filter in a low, grassy steam from leaves buried under hot stones. The sharper savor of fish skin crisping beside the fire. The air is warm now, the kind that makes stillness tempting, but an unease prickles at the edges of the camp. It's subtle at first, a change in bird sound, a reed rustle that isn't wind. You glance at the tracker, and he is already looking back at you, chin tilted toward the riverbank. You stand slowly, leaving the wall as it is, and follow his line of sight. Between the reed stems, you catch flashes of pale movement, not the struggling flop of fish, not the vertical stalk of a bird. This is heavier, the slow, deliberate shifting of a body that knows it belongs here. A moment later, a shape resolves. A crocodile, nostrils just above the surface, eyes steady, gauging. It does not move closer, but it doesn't need to. You know how quickly water can turn into muscle and teeth. Quirky fact, the eyes of a crocodile can reflect a faint red in low light, a glint at night that once learned you never stop looking for. Even in daylight, that strip of wet shining above the waterline is enough to keep you cautious. There is no panic, only adjustment. The fishing party is signaled back with low whistles, the kind that travel far enough without stirring interest. The elder tends the fire with deliberate volume, letting pops and crackles stand in for any hint of vulnerability. The crocodile slides sideways along the bend, eventually vanishing into deeper water. The balance shifts back. But the crack it left in the morning's ease will take longer to disappear. Work resumes, because it must. You bind the last joins in the wall, then lean the leftover reeds inside. Tomorrow's repairs, or maybe the beginning of another shelter. Should the river decide to rise. Sweat beads along your spine now, the sun high enough to flatten shadows, and the ground warm where you kneel. The younger one wipes their forehead with the back of their hand, leaving a streak of clay that makes them grin when they notice. The meal is ready. You sit in the shade of the patched wall, a cooled spot where the breeze passes soft through the reed fence. The fish is tender, lifting away from its bones. The leaves yield their contents with a sigh of steam. Around you, the others eat without rush in a momentary welcome, quiet. The tracker passes you a bone he has been scraping clean on a flat stone. For a point, his eyes seem to say, though no words shape it. You take it, turning it in your fingers, feeling where the tip should narrow. The work will wait until evenings cool, when stone dust won't cling to damp skin. For now, you roll the bone between your palms and think about what it might become, a small addition to the growing crowd of tools, each with its own task, in keeping you here one more day after the meal. Camp settles into that unspoken afternoon agreement. Move less, watch more, save effort for the hours when air is softer. The sun presses down with a weight that makes even sound feel heavy. You lean against the patched wall, its red surface warmer to the touch now. The clay seems drying to a lighter shade. The tracker has wandered to the far edge of the shade, eyes tilted toward the game trails you crossed in the morning. His body holds still in a way that almost disappears into the shapes behind him. That kind of stillness is learned. It's the reason the rest of you can close your eyes for a moment and still feel guarded. You close your own, though not completely. Behind your lids, the light flickers with the movement of leaves above, each shift of shadow telling you the direction of the wind, the possible approach of cloud. The air carries faint notes from the flats beyond the river, the sharper temps of sun-warmed dung, the distant tap of hooves on a baked patch of clay, so faint you might mistake it for the memory of sound, if not for the way the tracker's head tilted at the same instant. The younger one breaks the stillness first, rummaging in the shallow pit where unused tools rest under leaves. They return with a half-shaped flake and a small hammerstone settling beside you. The first strike is tentative, the second more confident. A sliver flicks away, catching the light before it disappears into dust. You take the core when offered, turning it so that its hidden promise is clearer, then pass it back. The rhythm of blows becomes its own language, encouragement in pauses, correction in angles. Quirky fact, sometimes newly struck flakes are so sharp they can slice a single hair clean through with barely any pressure. If you had the luxury to waste a hair for demonstration, the air stirs, and with it comes a murmur from the river, not water over stone, but the brief rattle of disturbed reeds. The tracker straightens, hand lifting in a signal you recognize now without thinking. Eyes to the bank, you follow his gaze. On the near shore, under the drooping arms of a tree, something moves. It is low, graceful, and wrapped in the spotted gold that makes everything else step aside. Leopard, it is not hunting you. Its head is turned toward the water, where somewhere beyond your sight, a bird's alarm has just cracked through the air. Still, its presence is a stone dropped into the still pool of the camp's mood. You all become quieter, smaller. The elder's hand hovers over the fire, ready to throw on a bundle of green leaves for smoke if the cat strays closer. But the leopard only drinks, tongue rippling the surface to silver, then slips back into the brush with the same economy of movement it arrived with. The tracker exhales softly, the tiniest allowance for muscles to ease. The moment passes, but it leaves behind a finer edge to everyone's awareness. Even the younger ones, blows on the core, become a shade more careful, as if matching the precision they just witnessed. By late afternoon, the heat loosens, shadows grow long and cool to the touch. You take up the bone point begun earlier, scraping it gently along the stone to narrow its tip. The smell of worked bone is faint but distinct, dusty, almost like dry hide, and it clings to your fingertips. You imagine this point hafted to a short shaft, useful for probing crevices, for hidden roots, for sewing heavier hides into something more than a wrap. The light shifts again. Upstream, a small cloud of dust rises where a group has returned. They bring with them the limp weight of river catch and the easy satisfaction that means no one will go hungry tonight. The fire is quick to welcome the new arrivals, flames answering the hiss of fresh food laid on the grill. Asterisk, asterisk 1, quirky or fringe, to listen, asterisk, asterisk. Some say certain stones like to be worked more after being warmed by the day's sun, that the heat loosens them, makes the flakes run cleaner. Whether or not it's true, you find yourself leaving a few choice cores in the sun's path, just in case. As the day tips toward its close, you take a slow walk to the edge of the camp's sound. The river reflects a stretched version of the sky, ripples pulling the light apart into long ribbons. In the hush before evening, everything feels suspended. You, the trees leaning toward the water, the air itself waiting for the first night voices to begin. You turn back with deliberate steps, the camp ahead outlined against the lowering light. In that outline is the wall you repaired, the tools you shaped, the food you caught, and the unspoken net of attention that held through every moment. None of it is certain for tomorrow, but tonight it is enough. Night begins not as a sudden curtain drop, but as a gradual softening of the day's sharp edges. The fire throws its light in a smaller, warmer circle now, brushing your knees with heat and the air above your head with scent. The world is already changing hands, daytime voices falling silent, night voices clearing their throats. The fish caught in the last light have been eaten, their skins curling in the embers. Tubers baked in ash have left behind thin, papery shells that crumble in your fingers when you throw them into the flames. The air has shifted from hot dust and green sap to the darker notes of smoke and cooked meat. You sit on the sand-smoothed stone you've claimed these past nights, turning a river cobble over and over in your palm. The right potential, not speaking. They watch the stone in your hand as though it might transform by will alone. You remember them watching you repair the wall earlier and realize that, in their eyes, the making of things is a quiet sort of magic. A few paces away, the tracker squats, elbows on knees, eyes trained outward, but mind half anchored in this circle of light. The elder hums softly through her teeth, stripping thin vines for binding. Each pull of fiber sounds like a page turned in a book you cannot yet read. You set the hammerstone against the nodule, turn it until a ridge offers itself as a starting line and deliver the first blow. The sound is low and sure, stone answering stone, and a flake peels away in a glossy curve. You turn the core, strike again, sending another edge skimming into your lap. Even in the hush of this hour, the crisp note of each flake seems to declare its readiness to work. Quirky fact: the way a flake breaks the smooth shell-like curve, called a conchoidal fracture, means it can bend slightly without snapping. That's why an edge straight from the stone can outcut bone tools many times over, until it blunts, and then the cycle begins again. The younger one picks up a fresh flake and tests it on the edge of a reed. It slices cleanly, the two halves falling apart with no sound at all. Their eyes widen. That reed was alive a moment ago. Now it is transformed, and in that tiny transformation, you see the seed of something bigger. One mainstream fact to listen this moment. This shaping of rock into intent is part of what will later be called the Old Dowan tradition, the oldest widely used tool-making culture of our genus. It spans over 1,000,000 years, its language not of words, but of angles, strikes, and edges shared hand to hand, eye to eye. You work until the stone in your palm feels lighter. The flakes lie scattered at your feet like the petals of a gray flower, each one a possible task waiting for a hand. The night grows cooler. The fire's warmth draws the band closer without anyone announcing the decision. Into this warmth, you all carry the unspoken outcome of the day. A wall tightened against the wind, food gathered without loss of blood, the eyes of predators met without disaster. The weight of those small victories is not nothing. From somewhere beyond the reeds, an owl calls 3 notes, then silence. The younger one mimics it softly, smiling at their own cleverness. When the owl does not answer, the elder shakes her head, not in disapproval, but because such calling is for day's work, not night's gamble. You place the finished core in the shallow pit beside you, resting it atop the other tools. Tomorrow, its edge will taste hide, root, or sinew. Tonight, it rests like the rest of you, under the same thin roof of dark, inside the same circle of careful light. The moon rises late, slipping between drifting strands of cloud, and its pale wash over the river turns every ripple into silver cloth. The fire beside you has found its steady breath, not flaring or sulking, just holding. In that steadiness, you can hear other things more clearly: the tiny spit of resin in the wood, the soft-knuckled turn of someone shifting on a hide mat, the faint lap of water on stone far down the bend. Shadows ripple against the reed wall, their forms stretching and shortening as people move, a shoulder leaning forward. You take in that play of movement, not because you need to, but because part of you is always counting. Who is here? Who has gone to the watch, where each person's weight changes the air? The tracker returns from the dark edge without speaking, but the way he sets his spear down tells you enough. There is nothing pressing at your boundaries tonight. He squats near the fire, drawing a shape in the dirt with a fingertip, 2 lines and a curve. You know what it means? The path of a herd, spotted far upriver, moving south. Tomorrow's possibility. The elder begins to work a piece of sinew between her teeth, softening it before she twists it into cord. The sound is faint, almost lost under the low whisper of the reeds. Yet it threads into the night like a reminder that even in rest, you are making for tomorrow. You find yourself matching her rhythm without thinking, turning a flake in your palm, feeling where the fresh edge narrows to nothing and where it still has bite. Quirky fact, twisting sinew, while it's still warm from the animal, helps bind the fibers tighter, a trick learned not from trial alone, but from watching what nature already does in tendon and bone. The air cools enough that you pull your hide closer around your shoulders. Overhead, stars sharpen in the dark, old constant shapes that need no names here. A memory stirs of the wet slap of fish on the bank this morning, of the reed's clean snap under a new tool, of the soft give of clay under your thumb while repairing the wall. They return not as isolated images, but as a single, unbroken thread, one quirky or fringe to listen. Some in the band believe that a tool made under a clear sky bites better than one napped under cloud, as if the stone had been able to see further while it was being shaped. You've never decided if you believe it, but on a night like this, with so many stars watching, you keep your hammerstone close, just in case. Sleep comes in turns. When it's yours, you ease down onto your side, one hand resting on the haft of your tool bundle, the other curled beneath your chin. The sounds of the camp soften, no speech, just the shared cadence of breath and the occasional shifting of a body resettling into comfort. Beyond that, the land's own breathing, the pulse of the river, the hum of night insects, the occasional crack in the dark that might be a branch, might be a step. Nothing presses close. The leopard you saw in the afternoon has likely taken its kill to high ground. The crocodile keeps to water tonight. Even the wind moves slowly, slipping through reeds with the lightest of fingers. You let your eyes close fully, the fire's warmth painting one side of your face, the cool night balancing the other. This is protection at its most ancient, not walls and doors, but a shared circle, sharpened edges, watchful eyes, and a memory that knows what to do when the quiet finally breaks. The change is subtle, a thinning of darkness, a softening of the cold, but your body feels it before your eyes fully open. The fire is no longer a bright companion, just a low, stable glow breathing under its cover of ash. The first rustle in camp comes from the elder, leaning in to draw away the top layer, coaxing those sleepy embers into thin tongues of flame. The sky beyond the doorway is still bluish-gray, like stone rinsed in cold water. You sit up slowly, shaking the night stiffness from your limbs. The hide slips from your shoulders, and the early air replaces its weight with a cool hand that makes you pull it back again. Someone passes behind the reed wall, their soft step brushing loose clay from yesterday's repairs. The wall has held no gaps wide enough for the wind to complain. You step outside just as the tracker returns from the river's edge. His hand lifts only slightly, a signal that means no new danger, but there is something to see. You follow him down the worn path. The mud at the waterline is streaked with fresh story, heavy, even strides of something big, perhaps a buffalo, pressed deep enough that water still shines in the impressions. The edges are sharp. Whatever made them passed not long ago. The younger one joins, barefoot and curious, crouching low enough to trace the outline with a fingertip. You all stay in that crouch for a while, reading the ground the way others might read carved marks on a wall. Then the tracker points south, toward a bend in the river and the rising sun beyond it. The herd is moving that way, The elder has set the morning's first task in motion, a few tubers roasting close to the heat, their skins turning dark and tight. You take up your half-finished bone point, running it gently against a flake's edge to smooth the last ridges. Flecks of pale dust stick to your fingertips. When you blow them away, they drift into the fire's updraft and vanish. Mainstream fact to listen. Finished bone points like this are part of the earliest known composite tools, where different materials are combined for a single purpose. But here, it's a rare piece of foresight, using what the land offers in more than one way. Breakfast is simple. The tubers split open to release steam that smells faintly nutty. A few scraps of leftover fish from last night, rewarmed on a flat stone. As you eat, the band talks in the language beyond words. A glance at the tracker as his gaze swings south. Ash sometimes take on a thin outer layer of charcoal that acts as a kind of natural toothpaste. If you chew it gently after the meal, it scrapes your teeth clean enough to keep the grit of the day's work from settling in. The light crawls higher, the air thins and brightens. Somewhere out there, the herd moves on. Your circle will follow, but not in haste. There are tools to wrap and carry, embers to bank for the journey. Unsheltered land, you move as a group, but not in a line, more like a ripple in the grass that never shows its full length. The tracker sets the pace, placing his feet where the ground speaks softly, avoiding the brittle stems that would announce you. The younger one keeps to your left, watching where you look before watching ahead, learning without needing to be told that eyes travel in layers, ground first, then mid-distance, then the sky. The air smells different away from camp, less of clay and smoke, more of warm grass rubbed between invisible hands. As the sun climbs, this smell will deepen into something sharper. But now it's still fresh with the wet memory of dawn. Birds in the thorn trees above make soft, uncertain clicks, not alarms. From beneath would fail. Reeds lean toward you, bowing under their own dew-heavy heads. You brush past, leaving a faint dark track where moisture clings to your legs. When you reach the spot where the herd passed, you rest your palm against one, feeling the breadth of it, imagining the weight behind each step. There's a hush here, not because nothing moves, but because everything nearby is listening to something farther off. You strain your ear and catch it, the faint, rhythmic tearing of grass, an occasional huff of breath. The tracker pauses, crouches, presses a hand flat to the ground. When he rises, his eyes meet yours, a warning without fear. Keep low, keep ready. You adjust your grip on the flake knife at your belt, its fresh edge resting in your mind like a coiled spring. Quirky fact, pressing your ear to the ground can sometimes let you hear herd movement before you see them. Vibrations travel faster through earth than through air, though they arrive as a faint, almost imagined hum. The closer you get, the more you move in starts and stillness, fitting yourself into the rhythm of the herd's inattention. You glimpse them first through a scrim of thorn branches, mottled brown hides, ears flicking against flies, tails swatting in a slow, lazy tempo. They are at ease now, unaware that your eyes have chosen one among them to shorten the day, for the elder stays behind, a calm figure in the shade, ready to receive whatever the hunt yields. You nod once, a gesture that means not now but soon. Mainstream fact to listen. Long before your kind held bows or threw spears with stone points, persistence hunting was the weapon, not speed in a burst, but the ability to keep going, to let the animal exhaust itself while you stayed just behind its fear. You shift your weight, readying for the slow push that will become pursuit. The herd shifts too, unaware of you, but answering some other small change in the air. A bird's sudden flight, a flicker of shadow. The line between hunter and hunted is never as fixed as you'd like to believe. You wait for the tracker's signal, the one that will turn stillness into motion. The tracker's hand lifts just enough for you to see it above the grass, then folds into a slow beckon. You feel the shift ripple through the few of you close enough to catch it. Breathing steadies. Weight redistributes to the balls of your feet. All other thoughts set down for later. The herd is still grazing, but their formation has loosened. One animal is drifting nearer the outer edge, drawn to a patch of darker grass. Its head is bent, horns angled away from you, the neat triangle of its shoulder muscles rising and falling with each chew. This is opportunity, but only if taken patiently. You begin the long closing of distance, a step, then a pause, another step, then stillness. The ground speaks under you in tiny syllables, the whisper of a bent stalk, the soft crumble of dry soil, the deep silence of your weight carefully placed on a stone. Every noise is measured against the constant tearing of grass in the herd's mouths. The younger one mirrors you exactly, their eyes fixed forward, their shoulders taut with effort not to rush. Your role now is not to strike, but to guide. The tracker moves in a slow curve to the far side, his body lowering until he almost blends into the color and form of the earth. The plan is as much about direction as it is about contact, to pressure the animal subtly. Its breathing will labor. Quirky fact: a spooked animal often runs into the wind, not away from it, so scent carries slower to whatever it fears. Hunters who know this can angle their approach to turn that habit into an advantage. A sudden lift of the target's head freezes you in place. Its ears flick once, twice, its eyes broad and wet. But instead of bolting, it lowers again, pulled back to the mouthful mid-chew. You count 3 breaths, then move on. The push begins subtly. The tracker's body appears for a moment in the herd's edge vision, not close enough to trigger panic. You and the younger one mirror the movement on the other side, tightening the invisible channel. The animal finally catches all the signs, the narrowing space, the press of eyes, and lifts its head for real this time, swallowing once before exhaling a sharp, heavy breath. Then the first trot steps come hooves, drumming a faster pattern. You let it go ahead but follow, keeping that drum beat close enough to deepen its fear. One mainstream fact to listen: persistence hunting works by making the animal spend its strength too quickly. Your species' gift is not the burst of a predator's leap, but the stubbornness to keep moving long after faster hunters have given up. The chase won't end soon, hours, perhaps, but the shape of it has been made in these first few minutes. The tracker is smiling in the way only a silent hunt can earn. The younger one's cheeks are flushed, eyes bright with the glimmer of understanding. The catch begins long before the body falls. Ahead, the herd has already veered, the chosen animal widening the gap between itself and the others. You raise your head slightly, tasting the wind. Its warmth carries the scent of dust, sweat, and the iron-tinged promise of what's to come. By the time you return, the air has changed. The edge of heat has gone from sharp to soft, but the light is richer. Paths, and your breath has lost the ragged edge of the chase. You bring back no carcass tonight. This was a pursuit that ended in wisdom, not blood, but the band reads that, too, in your steady gait and unhurried hands. Near camp, the reeds give way to the curve of the windbreak. The wall of woven stalks holds against a light breeze, its patched seams showing the day's earlier work. You're grateful for the sight of it's a line between outside and in, between the endless movement of water and grass and the small, contained world of the fire ring. Tools lie where they were left under the shade of two leaning saplings, half-finished bindings, an abandoned scraper with the afternoon light catching its edge. The elder looks up from the hearth, her eyes not asking but knowing you will help finish what the day began. You set down your bundle of reeds alongside the others. For weaving, the fragile top stems meant to thatch lightly over the frame. The scent is green and wet sweet. As your fingers close around the first bundle, the quiet takes on a working rhythm, not silence, exactly, but the sound of effort that knows itself. The creak of stems bent just shy of breaking, the soft push of clay into gaps, the short grunt when a stone is set deeper to anchor a post. Quirky fact, fresh clay daubed over a reed frame will shrink as it dries, tightening the weave and locking the wall in place better than any knot. The new section starts with the forked uprights. You plant each one in a shallow hole, pressing in damp earth with your heels until it holds. The younger one watches, then mirrors you, wiggling a post until it finds its seat. Between these, the thinner reeds begin to wind, baskets on their sides, each layer pressed down with the heel of your hand to grip the one below. The air carries the faint taints of wet ash. Someone has raked the old fire to spread charcoal into the windbreak's base, a trick to discourage burrowing insects. You feel for loose places in yesterday's build, tucking in rushes where daylight peeks through. The time the first wall stands at waist height, your palms are sweet, slick with crushed reed sap, and the shallow cuts on your fingers from earlier knots have darkened with dust. You sit back for a breath, resting the bundle of thin stems across your knees, and look with a quiet satisfaction at the way the light falls differently inside the. Without a word, he presses it into the earth at the wall's base on the windward side. You understand instantly, its weight will hold the wall's footing when the next rain turns this ground to a slow pulling paste. You fetch a second stone from the pile near the hearth, its edges worn smooth by river travel, and set it opposite. Together, they feel like the first part of a circle that will not lose its shape easily. The elder studies the frame, then gestures toward the top gap. Her hand makes a wave and loop, meaning the thatch should be laid so rain runs along and off, not down and through. You climb to the low corner post, tucking and layering stems with their heads aligned, pressing each into the next so they lie like the scales on a fish overlapping jetting water toward the ground. Quirky fact, aligning the leaf heads all one way doesn't just help with rain. Then rattling dot, as the roof takes form, the shade beneath it cools, A breeze comes low from the river, curling around the wall, and the charcoal dust at the base lifts slightly before settling again. You smell it, dry mineral, with a faint ghost of old smoke hand. It reminds you of floods past, when things, untethered, tried to float away. Not this time. You pause to drink from a half shell of water the younger one has filled. The surface shivers with each swallow you take, reflecting tiny fractured shapes of reed and cloud. When you hand it back, you nod toward the entrance gap, the last part to shape. It will take care to keep it wide enough for a quick step through, but narrow enough that the night wind will have to think twice before it walks in. Asterisk, asterisk, mainstream fact to listen. Asterisk, asterisk, the simple ring of posts and woven walls you're making is the direct descendant of what may be the oldest known building traces in human history. Post-hole circles and windbreak arcs dated to over 1.7 million years ago in East Africa. Some were little more than brush laid against sticks, but they marked a turning point. The idea that a place could be altered to hold you, instead of the other way around. The light shifts toward late afternoon. You can tell by how the shadow of the acacia leans longer across the fire ring and touches the base of the half-built wall. The thatching hums in the breeze, a low, dry whisper. You run a hand over the reedwork once more, feeling the slight give where it should be flexible. Air like a deep drum wrapped in cloth. Thunder, still far, but close enough that its memory tugs at yours. Shelter that was too light. Wind that found its way under and tore like teeth. You look at the frame and work again, faster now, but no less careful, because the river's patience can turn in a breath. The sky has shifted without your noticing the exact moment. What was a clear, pale dome now holds a subtle bruising along its western rim. The breeze that drifts from that side is cooler, the kind that threads itself through red and hair in searching fingers. Above, swifts scissor low, their arcs tighter than earlier, as if the air itself has become heavier to push through. You keep working the entrance gap, weaving the last lengths of reed in such a way that they can be untied from the inside if a quick step out is needed. Your fingertips ache faintly from the repetition, the fine scrapes from stamens catching along the lines of your prints. Every tug and twist releases the plant's green sweet scent, which quickly mingles with the denser smell of damp earth the wind begins to carry. The elder steps inside the half-complete shelter, crouching low. From within, her voice is a soft hum that turns into a wordless sound, testing how the air will move. She emerges, nodding once, then gestures with a sweep of her hand toward the fire circle. It's time to think about the smoke. You select a small pile of leaves, green enough to hiss, not dry enough to flare, and feed them into the fire's lower side. The first coil of smoke rises, lazy and pale. You watch how it moves through the open door, up past the roofline, and into the wind's carry, catching the plume and drawing it out. No backdraft, no choke, just a clean reading outside again. You crush more green leaves in your palm and smear a little of their sap along the frame nearest the entrance. It's not for the wood, it's for the air, adding a sharper note to the smoke at the front. A detail passed from hand to hand in bands long before yours. One quirky or fringe to listen. Some hunters believe a shelter's smoke can warn the spirits of the land if the scent is mixed with certain leaves, not to keep danger away entirely. Whether true or not, the leaves are here, so you burn them. The wind speaks in a slightly different accent now. The tracker glances toward the cloud bank, reading its underbelly for rain's distance. His nod is small, but says enough. You have a little time still, Earth. Inside, the light is already softer, the sound dimmed. A quiet proof of why you build at all. From somewhere downriver, a heron cries, one sharp carrying note, and the air between each drop of your pulse feels just a little denser. The first drops of rain are not heavy. They touch the reed roof with the soft, irregular patter of fingers on hide. The wind smells of wet stone now, the storm's edge moving sideways along the river instead of straight across it. You can almost feel the land's exhale, not relief exactly, but acceptance that the day's brightness is over. Inside the shelter, the air is darker, the light coming mostly from the fire's low, steady pulse. The coals hold themselves without complaint, a patient red that needs only a careful poke now and then. You take your moment to sit, feeling the warmth in your shins and the cooler air at your back. Around you, others move more slowly, storing their own energy for the long night ahead. When the rain eases, dusk is already leaning into the edges of the camp. The tracker stands, stretches once, and lifts his eyes toward you. It's time. Night watch begins without ceremony. You step out into the open, spear in one hand, the embers glow at your back. Beyond that glow, the world is shadow and suggestion. The reeds sway in their own long rhythm. Somewhere out there, the water moves against the bank, too soft for urgency, too loud to ignore. You make a slow pass along the shelter's curve, checking each anchor stone with your foot, ensuring no water has undercut its weight. The scent of the crushed leaves in the smoke still lingers faintly, a sharper temps beneath the wood's warm breath. Overhead, the last light catches on a low skein of clouds, dull silver against deepening blue. Quirky fact, sitting low to the ground in the dark. You sometimes feel vibrations through your heels before you hear the cause. The earth catches footsteps and pads them into your bones. You crouch near the fire's edge and feed it a single dry branch, enough to push the glow out another few paces without luring every eye for a mile. Behind you, the elder rearranges the sleeping hides so each person faces outward, every rest having its own slice of view. From downriver comes a sound that threads through still air, a long, uneven whoop. Hyena followed by a second, closer, as if answering. You feel the tiny lift of skin along your neck. Not a warning to act, but a reminder to remember. The younger one stirs in their matte eyes, half opening. You raise your hand, palm forward, low, the signal to settle, to listen without moving. Mainstream. Fact to listen. Your kind has held night watch for as long as there have been coals, banked in a circle, a behavior seen even in our earliest sites. Some archaeologists believe these shared vigils were as critical to survival as the tools in our hands. They allowed smaller bands to rest without losing awareness to the dark. The whoops fade, replaced by the quieter conversation of night insects, the low tick of cooling stone. But the alertness they stirred doesn't leave. It trails just behind your thoughts, ready to step forward the instant it's needed. From here, You can see the far horizon, swallowed now in black. The shelter's walls breathe with the faintest sway in the wind. In the glow of the fire, the tips of the reeds look like thin fingers reaching for a heat they can never quite touch. You settle into the rhythm of the watch, count breaths, read shadows. Let your ears drift wider than your eyes. Somewhere, something will move. It always does. A little more night has passed. You can feel it in the position of the cooler air, now pressing against the side of your face that had been warmed by the fire. The glow in the hearth has lowered itself, a slow heartbeat of embers. You kneel to stir them gently with a stick, coaxing a thin stream of sparks upwards until a pair of glowing coals brighten in answer. Then lay the smallest of dry twigs to keep that pulse alive. The other's breathing forms a soft perimeter of sound. Each sleeper's ear is turned outward, even in rest, habit, not chance. The elder shifts under her hide, a low murmur from her throat. Her hand finds the haft of the short stick she keeps nearby before drifting back toward stillness. From the river, a faint plunk echoes, not the heavy plunge of something large, but the small, perfect drop of something falling into still water. You pause and let your ears stretch into it. A nightbird maybe, skimming and dipping, or a fish snapping at the faint shimmer of insects over the surface. The smell of the air changes to a wider, cooler scent, as if the wind has stretched itself further up the water's path before touching camp again. It carries the faint musk of something alive, not close enough to hear, but close enough to notice. Quirky fact. Wind that changes direction gently at night often means a shift in larger weather far away, an early whisper of tomorrow's mood given hours in advance. You pass the signal to the tracker with a small shape of your hand. In the firelight, different wind. He stirs in his crouch, nods, and resumes his scan of the reed edge. Neither of you speaks. Words would only break the fragile balance between the fire's light and the roomy darkness beyond. There a rustle in the reeds, this time more deliberate, followed by the soft parting sigh of grasses against something with weight. Not rushing, not creeping, just existing on its own path. You lean your spear so its point rests just above your knee, in reach but easy, not a threat to trip upon. Your free hand folds over your thigh to still your pulse. A shape passes through the outer glimmer of the fire's light, low to the ground. Bristled along its back, tail lifted like a thin banner, warthog. You can see the slow twitch of its ears, the sidelong glance toward your circle, the way it judges the heat and shadow before deciding you are too much company tonight. You hear its hooves place themselves with care as it turns away. For a long moment after, you track the sound of it leaving each step fainter until it disappears into the chorus of night insects. Only then do you let the tension in your shoulders sink back towards the warm gravity of the earth. One quirky or fringe to listen. Some say that when a warthog swings its tail high at night, it's carrying the day's luck out of camp, and so you toss a pinch of ash into the fire to call it back. Whether luck listens is another matter, but the fire accepts the offering with a tiny hiss. The watch continues. The sky above you is deeper now, thick with stars, so sharp they feel like points you could cut yourself on if you reached up somewhere. In the distance, an owl's three-note call breaks the steady hum of crickets. The tracker answers it, not a perfect mimic, but close, and in this brief exchange, The edges of the night feel just a little more known. The first light is not a color, but a texture, the sky turning from the deep, star-sharp black of night to something you can almost feel on your skin, a softer blue-gray that lightens the air without yet showing the sun. Around the camp, bodies stir under hides, not with the suddenness of alarm, but the slow, careful kind of wakefulness that saves strength for later. The coals are still alive under their blanket of ash. You kneel, draw the cover back, and the glow stares up at you like an old friend waiting for the day's instructions. A small bundle of dry twigs encourages it into a steady flame. The smell of last night's smoke clings to your hair and skin, almost a second layer of clothing. Today is a walking day, far enough that the walls you built, the stones you placed, the cooled curve of your bed in the earth will be behind you before the sun hits its peak. The tracker kneels beside you with the ember carrier, a hollowed stone lined with damp clay, padded with dry grass. Into this you coax to glowing coals. They settle in like hearts in a box, a piece of yesterday's home you can take forward. The younger one watches the transfer intently. They know the ember is not just warmth, but time saved when the next fire must be made. Quirky fact: some bands carry embers between camps for days, feeding them with tiny breaths and flakes of fuel, keeping the same family of fire alive. Through rain, drought, and long travel, the elder divides the morning food, roasted tuber, still faintly sweet in the cool air, passed palm to palm, a strip of dried fish that cracks faintly between the teeth. You eat without rushing, because the hours ahead will not be short. When you step out from the shelter's weight of shade, the savanna spreads before you in long slopes of pale grass, still tipped with dew that will burn to nothing soon enough. In the distance, the darker shapes of acacia stand like lone sentinels. Farther still, the horizon trembles in soft heat, though the day has barely begun. You walk in an open V, the tracker at point, others fanning slightly behind to cover more ground for sight and scent. The ground here is a woven mat of cracked mud, sand, and stubborn, wiry grass. Each footstep makes a sound you catalog: the crunch of dry stems, the soft give of loam along a buried animal path, the sudden click of stone against stone beneath. The dust dot mainstream fact to listen. Early humans, like you, navigated these open spaces without maps, using landmarks, seasonal memory, and the sun's arc to hold direction. Not in the hand, mid-morning, the first herd appears, not the kind you'll hunt today, but the kind you'll avoid, shapes heavy and round-backed, near the glinting patch of a shallows. Hippos, even from here. Their muscular shoulders are visible above the waterline, their ears flicking with what looks like laziness, until you remember how fast they can move when bothered. The tracker angles your path in a slow, outward curve, the band adjusting without question. The air is drier now, less forgiving in the throat. You sip sparingly from the half-shell of water you've been given, wetting your tongue more than quenching thirst. In open ground, the rhythm of walking is almost meditative: step, scan, listen. Step, scan, listen, until something breaks the pattern. Ahead, a patch of ground shows a darker tone, almost black against the pale grass stems. The tracker drops to one knee, scoops a handful, and rubs it between his fingers. Damp, the scent is rich. The earth here has held last night's rain. It is not a water source, but the grass at its edge will taste sweeter to grazing animals. Another note to keep tucked in the band's living chart. A vulture turns lazy circles far ahead, not low enough to promise a meal, but low enough that your eyes keep returning to it as you walk. The open ground breathes very differently than the riverbank you left here. There is no frame, no protection, but distance. The danger is farther away, and yet, in a way, always nearer. By the time the sun clears the line of the acacias, the shade they once promised has shrunk to shallow footprints under their crowns. The coolness you carried from night dissolves first, from your shoulders, then from the backs of your hands, until every step feels like carrying a slow gathering weight. The tracker signals a turn toward a line of low mounds shaped by ancient termite work. The soil here is pale, baked to a crust that snaps underfoot. Between the mounds, wiry shrubs twist in patterns that suggest they've always resisted the wind. You pass them in a file, narrow enough that each foot lands in the shadow of the one before it. At first, you think it's water, but as you draw nearer, it reveals itself as stone, a scatter of flint nodules showing their smooth skins through the thin topsoil. The toolmaker stoops, turns a few in his hand, and pockets two without breaking stride. Carrying them will cost a little water in sweat, but gaining fresh edges in the next camp will earn it back. Quirky fact: flint nodules often sweat in morning dew, making their surfaces shine like wet bone, a visual cue that can be spotted from surprising distances. The air begins to hum, not from insects, but from the heat shimmering against your eyes. You adjust your breathing to a slower cycle, drawing air through your nose to let it cool in your chest. The younger one's steps start to lag. You pass them the ember bundle to carry for a while, not because it's lighter, but because importance has its own way of lending strength. Ahead, the tracker halts abruptly, one palm lifted low. You copy the stillness, scanning the ground. First, you see nothing, and then 3 shallow depressions, round and wide, with edges crisp as cut fruit. Fresh elephant. The dung nearby is still glossy, flies working its surface. The tracker squats to press a hand into the print, then angles it southwest. The elephants are moving away toward the deeper river meanders. Knowing where they are matters. You skirt their path at a respectful arc. Mainstream fact to listen. Elephant tracks and dung are among the most reliable natural signs of distant water. They can smell and remember sources over tens of kilometers, and their travel routes become unmarked, living roads other creatures, including your own, can follow. By midday, the ground tilts downward toward a shallow basin. You smell the hint of standing water before you see it. A still, clay-lined pool, no wider than a hut, half shaded by crooked thorn. The tracker tests the bank with a foot before kneeling. The water is clear at the edges, darker in the middle. One by one, you cup your hands into it, feeling it against your palms like smooth glass before lifting it to your lips. It tastes faintly of the earth it sat in, but the coolness travels all the way behind your eyes. After drinking, you use the last handful to wet your neck and the pulse points inside your elbows. The relief makes your skin prickle. Quirky fact: wetting the thin skin at your wrists and elbows cools your blood just enough to fool the body into thinking the air has softened. buying you a little more endurance in heat like this. The pool. It is not for lingering. The earth around it is crossed with tracks, gazelle, warthog, and, too fresh for comfort, the neat round pads of a big cat. You move on, climbing out of the basin's shade and back into the open where you can see farther. Even if it costs you relief, the trail bends now toward a line of darker green in the distance, a promise of another watercourse. Between here and there lies a wide, bare stretch where the only cover is distance and the sky's thin mercy. You tighten the strap on your basket, shift the spear to your other hand, and step into it. The ground flattens until it feels like you're walking on the palm of a giant hand, every dip shallow, every rise too slight to hide behind. The heat here doesn't just press down, it rises back up from the cracked surface as if the land is breathing on your legs. Each step crunches in the brittle crust, loud enough in your own ears to seem like a signal. The tracker extends one arm out to the side, an unspoken reminder to widen the band's spacing. A single moving clump is too easy to mark from afar. A looser spread breaks the shape into something the grass can fold around. You adjust your path a few paces, right? Keeping both the younger one and the ember carrier in your peripheral vision. The air tastes of sun-baked dust, fine enough to cling to your tongue, and of something more metallic that drifts on a passing breeze. You glance upwind. Far off, a pale patch glitters in heat shimmer. It's not water. Bone, a scatter of them, clean and long exposed, their whiteness standing out against the dun earth. As you pass closer, you can read the story in fragments. Ribs splayed like fallen spokes, a skull with one horn snapped and weather rounded, tooth scores in the pelvic bone from months ago. Not predator fresh, but a reminder that this span you're walking is also a crossroads for other hungers. Quirky fact, in heat shimmer, bone can mimic the shine of distant water. More than one thirsty traveler has crossed extra ground for nothing but a mouthful of dust. The sun is higher now, shadows tightening under your chin and elbows. Your hand finds the smooth curve of the water shell at your side, but you wait, pacing your sips against the tracker's body language, not your own thirst. When he lifts his chin toward the far green you're moving toward, you let yourself imagine the smell of wet earth already in your nose. It helps. Halfway across, a mark catches your eye in the hard pan, a flattened oval with splayed toe impressions. Not hooves, human, older than you want it to be. The edges have crumbled under wind, but still within the season. You motion the tracker, and he crouches, palm hovering over the print without touching. His mouth presses thin for a heartbeat before he rises again, scanning the horizon with new weight in his gaze. One mainstream fact to listen. Out here, human tracks can outlast the memory of the person who left them, sometimes visible for days. If the weather holds, reading their age is as much about the sharpness of the edge as it is about the color of disturbed earth inside the print. The far green is closer now, the heat between your eyes and it blurring the edges into a wavering line. You can just begin to distinguish shapes, thorn trees, a knot of taller reeds, when the tracker slows and gestures low and tight. You follow his hand to a point ahead and right movement, small but upright. 2, no, 3 figures. 2, far to see faces, but close enough to feel the old animal part of your mind note. not us, you all stop. In this openness, the pause feels immense. By the time the horizon folds into darker green again, the air feels heavier against your chest, the light turning from harsh white to the warmer gold of late afternoon. You've stopped thinking about each step, but your legs have not. They speak in a slow, building ache. Ahead, the tracker lifts a hand, signaling a rest. The shade is thin, just enough from a bent arm thorn tree to break the direct sun. But you drop gratefully into it. The ground here is soft with old leaf litter. You set down your bundle and notice, in the unthinking glance you've carried all day, that the younger one is favoring one foot. The limp is small, barely there, but it tugs at your awareness. When the band settles, you motion them closer. They lower themselves onto the ground, ankle outstretched, still dust gray from the road. A shallow split in the skin shows along the instep, the edges dark with dirt. It's not deep, but here, even small wounds can speak too loudly if ignored. You fetch a palmful of water from the skin and pour it gently over the cut. The rivulets carry away a fine stream of grit. The youngster winces, more from the coolness than from pain. The elder passes you a twist of leaves broad, soft, crushed between her palms, until their oil darkens them. The smell is sharp, green, with a hint of bitter, quirky fact. Some leaves, when bruised, release oils that insects dislike. A double, use as both cover for a wound and a way to keep flies from laying eggs where they aren't wanted. You press the leaf mash lightly against the split skin, binding it in place with a strip of softened hide. The band doesn't pause for ceremony. Care is part of the daily work. Like fire feeding and water finding, the younger one's eyes meet yours briefly. Not gratitude, exactly, but the quiet trust of someone who believes they will still walk tomorrow. Mainstream fact to listen. Archaeologists have found Homo habilis remains showing individuals who lived long after injuries that would have made them unable to feed or defend themselves alone. Evidence that even this early, our genus shared food and protection for the hurt. The tracker distributes hot stones taken from the edge of the fire. You cup one against your palm, heat seeping deep into the joints that have been working since dawn, then pass it to the elder, who presses it gently against her knee. The warmth works slowly, unlike the sun's sharp burn, loosening instead of draining. The air under the tree holds the day's last warm breath. Someone passes you a scrap of dried meat. You chew it slow, letting the salt bloom against your tongue. Beyond the edge of shade, the bush still hums with insect voice, unchanged by the pause in your movement. Tonight, this tree will be your anchor. Tomorrow, the path will ask for more. But for now, there is only this small circle, and the certain knowledge that everyone in it will leave as whole as possible. The sun tips lower, and the thin shadow of the thorn tree deepens until it's a pool you can almost step into. You shift your seat so your back rests against the trunk, the bark's hard map pressing through hide and skin. The cut on the younger one's foot is wrapped. Leaf oil scent faint, but still sharp enough to notice when the breeze falls still. The tracker moves quietly between bodies, speaking without sound, a gesture here to change where someone sits, a tap on the shoulder to signal a later watch turn. You understand the choreography immediately. Those with steady legs will pace the outer edge, Those resting will stay in the center. The injured will remain under the tree, close to the ember bowl, where warmth and help are only an arm's reach away. You bank the fire low in its stone circle, drawing the brighter coals to one side so the glow doesn't carry far. The smoke rises steady through the branches, carrying with it the bitter green breath of crushed leaves. Somewhere far above, a nightjar clicks once before wheeling away. Quirky fact: wood burned low and slow produces a smoke that not only keeps insects at bay, but softens the smell of the camp's own bodies. Less for predators to follow on the wind. One of the older women crushes a handful of berries in a half shell. She passes it to the younger one with the wrapped foot, murmuring, "Just enough for warmth rather than words." The tart scent cuts through the dry air. The youngster drinks slowly, eyes half closing as the liquid cools the inside of their mouth. Mainstream fact to listen: simple plant poultices, warm stones, and food sharing aren't just kindness. They're some of the earliest forms of organized healthcare our genus had. Even without speech like ours, care was communicated in touch, in handed objects, in the steady nearness of others. The first watch begins as the light ebbs completely. You sit with your spear across your knees, gaze loose but moving. Beyond the fire's faint reach, the shapes of bush and ground merge into a single breathing dark. The air carries the scents you've come to know by their weight in your chest: dry seed heads, faint dung from a recent antelope path, the cold metallic thread that sometimes means rain far off. Under the tree, the wounded youngster sleeps, with their foot propped against a smooth stone, still warm from the day. The fire's glow touches the curve of their cheek. Around them, your small band is arrayed like stones in a loose circle, each one knowing exactly which way to lean if the dark stirs. It starts as a pause in the night's own breathing. One moment, the insect chorus is unbroken. The next, there's a thinning, a gap, as if a section of the song has held its breath. You don't move your head toward it. You just let your ears lean further into the dark. The tracker straightens fractionally on the far side of the circle. His hand lowers to touch the ground, feeling for what his ears have already guessed. Too steady for wind, too irregular for rain. You shift your spear so its shaft rests along your forearm, blade angled just past your knee. Your other hand slides to the hide-wrapped stone flake on your hip. Its cool weight, a quiet assurance. The youngster stirs in their sleep, muttering into the crook of an arm. You flick your gaze toward the elder on the opposite side. She reads your eyes, leans forward, and places one thick palm gently over the child's ankle wrap, not to wake them. Keeping a hand over the dressing at moments of tension is an old, almost instinctive gesture in many bands. The sound comes again, a soft swish, brush, swish through knee-high grass. Then it stops, and the absence is weightier than the noise. You realize whatever is out there has stopped moving too. Your grip on the spear tightens just enough to feel the grain of the wood bite against your palm. Asterisk, asterisk, mainstream fact to listen. Asterisk, asterisk. Many predators will circle downwind before closing the distance, reading your scent before your silhouette. That's why night watches often place a sentinel in the wind's path, even if it seems less covered. It's the oldest security system in the human record. The tracker's hand rises, fingers spread, hold. You count a slow 5 in your head. Then the grass ahead stirs once more, this time angling away. The faint pad of steps stretching thinner and thinner until the insect music weaves itself back together. No rush, no chase, just the night restitching its own quiet. The elder leans back into the tree's rough trunk. You release the small knot of tension in your shoulders and let your eyes soften again. The smell of leaf oil from the youngster's bandage drifts faint but reassuring in the back of your nose. You decide to keep your place in the wind's path a little longer, listening for the next loose thread the night might pull. The light comes steadily this morning. No thin gray hesitation, just a deliberate pushing back of the dark until the first shapes of grass and bark are clear enough to name. The air, still cool, sticks lightly to your skin in a way that promises heat ahead. The fire under the tree is small, just enough to keep the damp from the night out of your bones. Beside it, the younger one shifts, flexing their bandaged foot. The cut looks clean, edges closed in the leaf wrapping. They nod once. When you meet their gaze, they can walk, if not run. The tracker is already moving in the direction the wind bends from nose, working the same scent threads. You now lift your head to catch faint water, crushed grass, the dusty sweetness of seed heads drying on the stem. Somewhere beyond that, there is an animal scent, not predator sharp, but musky, perhaps. Antelope. Breakfast will need to come from both hands today, some to gather, some to stalk. You shoulder your woven reed basket while the elder pushes a flat stone into the heart of the coals, warming it for later. She hands you a small twist of cordage light, strong, good for binding a bundle or making a carrying loop for something wriggling, quirky fact. A short cord looped around your wrist with a half hitch can carry a live fish or small animal without tying it. The natural curve of your arm and the creature's own movement, keeping it from slipping free. The band fans out slowly, keeping the tree in sight until the ground folds just enough to hide it. You take the nearer foraging sweep, eyes scanning knee-height for tubers, shoots, or berries that haven't yet been stripped by birds. The soil here breaks easily under your digging stick, and the first prize comes quickly, a fat tuber. Skin the color of baked clay, cool and damp where it parted from the earth. 2 more, join it in the basket, cushioned in a wrap of sedge leaves, across the shallow dip. The younger one is cutting seed heads into a hide pouch, their shoulders rocking with the rhythm of the work. The sound blends with the morning wind, soft, dry chitters of stalk meeting flake edge. Farther out, the tracker and 2 others are shadows against the pale grass, following some line of sign you can't see from here. The sky has taken on that thin, glassy look it gets before heat bleeds, all scent from the air. The faster-moving hunters slip out ahead. Your work is to fill the other half of hunger before the sun steals the easy hours. Mainstream fact to listen by this point in human prehistory. Our ancestors regularly combined gathered plant foods with hunted meat in the same day. A broad spectrum strategy that archaeologists find in site debris as mixed layers of bone and charred seeds. It meant survival didn't hinge on one source alone. You straighten, stretch your back, and scan for the others. A movement on the long grasses. Edge catches your eye, not the band this time, but something low, quick, and brown-backed, darting through a hair. Too far for your thrown stick, but close enough to mark the burrow it disappears into for another time. You make a mental note, turn back toward the tuber patch, and keep your hands busy. This food won't walk back to camp on its own. The first sound of their return is not footsteps, but the muffled rattle of something shifting against a hide wrap. You straighten from the tuber patch, hand lifting just enough to shade your eyes. 3 figures emerge from the grass's broken edge, the tracker in front, his left arm curled around the bundle as though holding a child. Behind him, one carries a length of vine threaded through to fish, their silver skins flashing when the light finds them. The air carries the scent of what's coming, sharp, metallic, fresh. You can almost taste the oil on your tongue before you're close enough to see the small antelope laid neatly within the hide, its limbs folded, eyes closed as if asleep. A clean shot, no wild chase at the end. You meet them halfway, the grass brushing your thighs, and help transfer the animal to a flat space of trodden earth. The tracker unwinds the hide, revealing where the cut was made, just behind the shoulder. Efficient, merciful, the kind of kill that leaves the meat unspoiled. Quirky fact: blood cooled quickly after a kill will thicken less and mix more easily with fat or ground seeds to make a dense, portable food paste, a trick handed down long before containers came with lids. The elder joins you with a flake sharp enough to whisper through hide. She works in a rhythm you've seen all your life, a shallow incision along the legs, the careful peeling back of skin without tearing, each motion matched by a flick of her wrist to keep grit away from the flesh. You steady the carcass when she needs both hands. She returns the quiet favor by accepting your basket of tubers without breaking her work. The younger one arrives with their pouch of seeds, tipping a portion into a shallow bowl beside the cleaned fish. A second bowl receives strips of meat as they're cut, some to roast now, some to be hung on a rack of forked sticks where the smoke can find them. Over hot stones, the tubers are laid to steam beneath broad leaves, their sweetness deepening. With every minute, mainstream fact to listen. Archaeological evidence from early firesides shows cut marks on bone alongside carbonized plant remains, indicating that from very early on, humans processed different types of food together in the same space, making the hearth not just a cooking spot, but the center of daily organization. The tracker takes the stripped hide and scrapes it with the edge of a stone, pushing away the last clinging threads of flesh. Later, when dried, it will carry something else: water, coals, gathered food. Nothing is wasted if it can be carried or shaped. As the smells grow richer, roasting fish skin pop, the nut-like warmth of steaming tuber, the clean mineral note of fresh-cut meat, conversation stirs in hand signals and low hums. This work is not hurried. Every action ties directly to the next hour's strength, the next day's movement. By the time the sun has swung past its highest point, your small camp is ringed with the quiet evidence of provision: a leaf-wrapped bundle of cooked tubers, a hung line of meat drying in fragrant smoke, a skin stretched and staked at the edges to catch the slanting air. Here, in the dapple beneath the thorn and the steady smoke of the fire, the band's hunger has been not only answered but planned for. The fire has burned down to a deep, even bed of coals, perfect for the work still ahead. You crouch beside the drying rack, checking each strip of meat. The thinner ones have already darkened and stiffened at the edges. They bend with only the smallest give when you press them. The smoke has threaded itself into them, a sharp, rich smell that will keep well past this camp. The elder joins you with the hollowed gourd used for carrying the most precious stores. Inside, she lays the first batch of dried meat, layering it between leaves to keep the smoke flavor trapped and the dust out. Each piece is placed with care, as if weight and shape must balance as much as taste. At the edge of the fire ring, 2 others work the tubers, the cooked ones mashed into a dense paste with the butt of a stone, then shaped into palm-sized cakes. These will dry in the sun as the day leans forward, becoming light enough to carry, heavy enough in the body to stand in for a missed meal. Quirky fact: mixing soft tuber mash with crushed seeds makes it slower to spoil, as the dry seeds absorb leftover moisture and keep mold from finding a home. Your hands turn to the fish. One you eat now, its skin crisped to split and curl over the tender meat. The other you prepare for the journey, split, gutted, packed with a handful of salt-tasting ash from a certain grass root the elder prefers. This will stay good 4 days if kept cool and shaded. When the drying meat is set aside, the tracker and 1 other take a portion of the surplus, strips too fresh to travel well, and walk them a short distance away, tucking them into a hollow between 2 stones. A few reeds are laid loosely over the top. The cache: if hunger drives you back this way, the land will already have a meal waiting. Mainstream fact to listen: ethnographic studies of recent hunter-gatherer groups show that catching food along known travel routes is an ancient practice, a way of turning territory itself into a storehouse. The smell of roasting and smoking has spread beyond your circle. You notice it first in the change of bird noise, an abrupt lift and scatter from the thorn canopy. Then a faint rustle in the grass beyond the arc of shade. Your eyes meet the tracker's. His hand rests loosely on his spear as his weight shifts forward. The movement reveals itself. Only a jackal this time, narrow-faced and sharp-eyed, pacing just at the edge of comfort. Its nose works the air in little jerks, head tilting side to side. You keep your posture easy, but your gaze direct, letting it see that this fire and its food are already claimed. After 2 slow passes, it slips back into the grass, only the tips of the stems marking its path. Around the fire, the final tasks continue. The gourd of dried meat is lashed shut with soft vine. The tuber cakes are set where sunlight can lean on them until evening. The ember carrier is checked, the heart of tomorrow's fire already, alive and waiting by the time the shadows begin to stretch. Everything you'll take is either cooling to stillness in its wrap or breathing gently over the coals. The rest belongs to the cache, to the scavengers bold enough to claim it, or to the land itself. Tonight, you'll eat until hunger pulls back, and still have the roads share left for the morning. The light thins to honey and then to smoke, and the day's heat relaxes its hold on your skin. The food you'll carry is cooling in its wraps. The cache is shaded where reeds lean across to quiet stones. Smoke drifts in a clean thread from the fire, steady enough to tell you the wind has made up its mind for the night. You rise, test the cords that lash the gourd of dried meat, and lift the ember carrier to feel the warmth in its belly alive. but not greedy. The younger one adjusts the sling of tuber cakes across their shoulder, careful of the foot that healed enough for walking, not yet for running. 2 practiced sweeps. Distant thunder speaks once, low and cloth muffled, somewhere beyond the line of darker trees that hint at water. It isn't a threat yet, but it turns the day's route from preference into plan. Between this camp and the next shade lies a crossing, a shallow braid of river most days. Falls far upstream, sound and light don't always warn you in time. You move before full dark. The ground underfoot changes from baked to damp in a handful of strides. To their song, and the air grows cooler in a way that slicks your forearms with a fine dewdot at the bank. Moonlight breaks the surface into a skin of hammered tin. The tracker raises a hand and crouches, palm sweeping low, reading what your eyes can't see yet, the push, the pull, the places where the river shows its bones. You kneel, too, and press a flat stone with your toes. It holds. A pace left. The same test finds silt that tilts under weight like a trick. Mainstream fact to listen. Bands like yours likely used repeated landmarks, seasonal memory, and the sun's and moon's arcs to move between watercourses, turning rivers into corridors that shaped routes, foraging, passing the free end to the tracker, who tests the first 3 steps with his calves, not his shinskin that can feel current without losing balance, not straight across, letting the water's push spend itself along the line of his body instead of against it. The cord goes slack, tight, slack again, breathing with the river itself behind you. Next time, in the same hour, the same wind, she'll know if the smell of the water has changed toward danger or safety, quirky or fringe to listen. If you leave a small food scrap on the upstream stone, you coil the cord around your wrist and step where his feet left darkness in the current, each placement seeking stone, not faith. Midstream, a smooth rock turns to moss under your toes. Your weight settles low, the cord pulls once. Breath quick but contained, the gourd shifting softly against their side with each small wave. By the time you climb the far bank, the night has gathered fully, and the thunder leans closer, not a threat, but a reminder that you are not alone in shaping the way the land sounds. The far side of the river carries a different quiet. The ground holds more give, more roots underfoot, and the air is scored with the sharper green of crushed stems. You choose a high patcha, waist-high swell of earth, stitched with shallow roots, held low, small paths, fresh, little hooves, not claws. You eat enough to settle the emptiness, but not enough to load your limbs. And then the fire is coaxed down to coals, the color of old fruit, changes the pitch of every reed in the dark, then falls away into a patter, then into a hush filled with the sound of water finding every surface. The shelter tonight is not walls and roof. It is your circle, your tools within an arm's reach. A third stone becomes a small bridge for your hand if you need to lift the ember box in the dark without stepping into the flow. These are small moves, the kind that look like fussing until the hour when they are the only difference that matters. Quirky. Fact. A ring of wet sand, if you can find it and pack it tight, will keep a coal alive longer by stealing just enough air to slow its hunger, useful on nights when sleep must do the longer work. Lightning lifts the world in brief, bone clean, flashes reds etched in silver, raindrops like bright seeds tossed against your forearms, the far bank a wet shadow. In those instants, your eyes learn the path back to the water and the way out of the low spot you're in. And then the dark returns with a kindness. Sound grows larger. A fire likely unfolded in stages carrying and tending natural coals long before true fire-making was mastered. Even 1.0 million years ago. Cave suggests that keeping and using fire was already changing how and where our ancestors sheltered. You sleep in turns, ear to ground when it's yours too. Listen, heal bones, telling you when footsteps are earth close before the wind can decide to share. The storm spends itself mostly as talk. The river lifts only a hand's breadth. By the hour when the night's breath grows colder at your back, the clouds have thinned into ragged bands, and the coals still pulse in their bed of guarded ashdot. Morning is not dry, but it is generous, the kind that leaves a clean taste along your teeth and turns every blade to a narrow mirror. The river wears last night's thinking in a new curve against the bank. A small bite taken at the bend where the current loved the shore too much. Your footprints from yesterday are a story told and smudged. The ones you leave now will last, only until the sun asks the ground to forget. You stand at the water's edge and watch the small lives resume. A fish's mouth making a circle with no sound at all. The crossing you made is still there. Just rearrange. The rocks you used are a half pace to the left, the moss softer where the eddy settled longer. You feel it in your ankles when you test it again. The river changed and your body changed. With it, the tracker turns his face toward the wind and names the day with his shoulders east first, then south by the sun's later arc. Keeping the high ground when the river speaks with too many tongues. The elder nods, lifting the gourd to her hip and settling the balance against her ribs. The younger one checks their foot once, presses the bandage to make sure the leaf oil still scents the wrap, and gives you a small, exact grin that means they can bear the day. Quirky or fringe to listen. Some travelers tap a stone 3 times before stepping into a crossing they've used before waking the path, reminding it of their feet. You move. The path you choose curves along the shoulder of the land where roots knit the ground and the reeds give way to open stalks that won't hide teeth in their shade. The sun finds your neck only in brief touches as it breaks through strips of thinning cloud, and the air holds the clean iron of rinsed stone. Mainstream fact to listen. The old down world your band inhabits overlaps with the first stirrings of technologies that will later reshape edges and routes the transition toward larger, planned flakes and more complex templates that begins to appear around 1.7 million years ago, even as old one strategies endure beside them. Movement, water, and risk are the constant frame through both. By midday, the river is only a sound, too. Your left and a coolness on the wind. Patient feet, eyes reading, push and pull instead of only line and distance. Storm, river, risk. All 3 became less about danger and more about timing when to trust the cord. Written for a morning, forgotten by afternoon, and remembered by your body far longer than any mark on the ground. The morning holds its promise longer than most, the kind of light that feels poured rather than struck, the kind of air that keeps its cool on the inside of your wrists. Upward in slow, patient ribs, Each rise gains a touch more wind, a touch more seeing. You move in a shape the band understands without thinking. Not a line, not a circle, a loose comb. Each person's sight interlocking with the next. Hands speak. First, today. A flick of the wrist means stone worth pocketing, and the toolmaker peels aside to lift a nodule with that. A flat palm pressing down means lower here. Wind tells more than eyes, and you all fold your knees for a breath to listen to the ground. On a crest no higher than a hut, you pause where the view lifts into distance. The tracker squats and draws a map that lasts only as long as the breeze will allow. One curve for river. To the elbow, mouth a narrow line of concentration. They trace the dry line with a fingertip, then look up to the horizon and back, trading the sands, drawing for the skies. Quirky fact, a fingertip dipped in spit will hold dust long enough to draw a memory on your own forearm, a map carried. Skin warm for an hour, wiped away with one stroke when it's done. A sudden lift and settle of grass at mid-distance adjusts every shoulder in the band by a finger's width. Not threat, the rhythm is too loose, but not wind alone. You raise two fingers, crooked inward, note, not chase. The shapes resolve into small antelope, sweeping a shallow S through seed heads, ears folding and opening like tiny fans. The tracker sketches their path with a knuckle in the dust, erases it, and then presses a neat thumbprint at the basin mouth they are angling toward. Water there, later. Mainstream fact to listen. Early humans navigated by stitching landmarks, seasonal, water, and sun angles into a shared cognitive map, a mental chart, passed and refined through gesture, gaze, and practice rather than speech or symbols. A durable wayfinding that lets small bands cross open country, return to resources, and avoid known risks across many seasons. You rise again, letting the wind carry the last of the dust map from the ground. In your head, the lines remain: river to left, basin ahead, higher, safer, shoulder for the heat hours. The younger one watches your eyes more than your feet now, and when you glance to the sky's pale wedge, where the sun will be at late morning, they follow and nod, catching the lesson where it lives. By late morning, the air opens a bright, clear taste with edges that thin the voice. You save talking for the palms and the tilt of heads. So the sun glosses a natural ridge. Your own hand finds its partner hammerstone without looking. Two measured blows send a flake skidding into light. Its edge, a pale grin. You pass it to the younger one, who tests it on a reed stem. The cut is so clean, the halves think they are still touching for a heartbeat. Quirky fact, if two new flakes are rubbed edge to edge softly, the burrs feather down and the bite gets smoother, a quick hone without losing the first sharpness. Ahead, the land dips toward a shallow bowl lined in darker soil. You smell it before you see it, a low, round sweetness of damp. The tracker slows, hand describing a wide arc with a low wrist. Give it room. Basins are where scent collects, where paths cross without asking. You skirt the rim in a wider circle. Feet noiseless on packed earth that still remembers the storm's hand. From the rim you can read last night's traffic, the way smoke reads wind. Rounded pads, one cat, light, not fresh, cloven tracks, two antelope, sunrise, dragged line, and blunt toes, porcupine, heavy with wet, sometime in the dark. Your palm taps twice. a small praise to the ground for telling the truth. The elder unfolds a strip of hide to show the younger one a knot that can be tied and untied with one. Pull a loop to bind a bundle without strangling it. Fingers move slow, then quicker, then slow again. The younger one repeats, fails, smiles at the failure, as if tasting something new, and does it again until the hide lies obedient in the same neat spiral. Mainstream fact to listen. Old Owen tools. Simple flakes and cores, struck with control, are the longest-lived stone tradition on record, spanning roughly 2.9 to 1.7 million years before more planned bifacial technologies take hold. Even after Aquilan appears, Old Owen edges continue alongside it, where tasks and raw material suit the simpler strike-and-use approach. You rest at the basin's higher lip long enough to eat a leaf-wrapped tuber cake. It breaks under your teeth with a dry sigh. Sweetness following the smoke tastes like a small, late gift. Across the bowl, a heron places its feet, as if each step must be asked permission. The air holds still for a long breath, then trades places with a slower one. The day is rearranging. Afternoon pulls shadows thin as thread, then lets them thicken again as the sun leans. The path you choose rides the seam, where the wind can comb your scent away from the lower, thicker growth. Every dozen steps, the tracker's hand dips low to brush the plant tips, reading the direction the seeds have leaned, confirming the wider arc. Orphaned on this rise, its skin is pale, dimpled, the kind that breaks clean. Teeth more than your ears. The third falls rough. That never gets used up, a pocket weight to hold the hand steady and the mind attentive. Even when better stone is at hand, the lucky one is tapped first to wake the motion from the high seam. At the V's mouth is a stand of thorn, and at its throat a knot of fresh dung, still shining. Your tongue tastes iron a moment. You all flow outward, the shape loosening. Each person holding the next in the corner of the eye. The younger one looks left to you. You keep your gaze easy, not heavy. You want their feet light, not glued by fear. In the thorn's shadow, something lifts and leans only a boar, tusks pale, eyes rimmed in flies. It reads your scent, counts your shapes, decides the sum is not worth the question. The band bends back toward the seam and picks up the day where it left it, as if the thread had not snagged, as if your heart had not changed its pace for those 20 steps. Mainstream fact to listen. The earliest secure traces of tended fire, ash, burned bone, and heated sediments deep within Wonderwork Cave suggest hominins were using natural flame and maintaining it by about 1.0 million years ago. Long before habitual hearths are common, control came in layers, keeping coals, then coaxing fire. The ember carrier is set where one hand can find it without looking. The gourd is lashed against a root, the knot dressed so it will not swell and bite if the night turns wet. The younger one kneels and draws the day back into the dirt, a curve, a notch, a dot, where the boar stood, a small cross, where tuber grew fat. You do not praise it with sound. You touch the cross and then tap your ribs twice, keep it. Their grin is narrower than morning, but deeper. Dusk is a softer teacher. The reed of your own breath plays quieter. The ground's cool rises to meet the bones in your feet. The wind has gone from a language to a hum. The elder loosens a twist of cordage and teaches a new knot, a hitch that holds under pull but falls open when the line goes slack. The younger one fails it twice, then laughs without sound and gets it on the third. Quirky fact: ash rubbed into a damp palm will make skin grip reeds better for weaving, and will keep a knot from biting so hard the fibers tear when you undo it. The tracker's eyes count the horizon's last shapes, then set a watch, like arranging stones, around a small, shallow. You take the wind edge, as you often do, not bravado. Your ears trust the air. The ground speaks its oldest language through your heels. Insect tap, seed fall, small lives adjusting to night. Far off, a hyena declares itself to no one in particular. Nearer, the thorn shifts its shadow one last time and goes still. Mainstream fact to listen: the time window of Homo habilis, roughly 2.4 to 1.65 million years ago, overlaps the flourishing of old down tools. Whether every hand that napped belonged to habilis is debated, but the pairing of handy man with simple effective flakes remains a thread through how we think early human life felt and moved. You lower your eyes to the small map the younger one redrew on their forearm, earlier lines now blurred to a gray patch by sweat and time. With a damp thumb, they retrace only the curve of the river and the dot of the basin. 2 signs are enough. They lift the arm and hold it against the sky's last brightness, learning the distance between a mark on skin and a shape in the world. Quirky or fringe to listen: 3 pebbles set where you sleep, 1 at head, 1 at belly, 1 at heels, are said to help the body remember the next day's path. You place them anyway, because remembering comes in many small forms. Night arrives without event, and in that lack is its own gift. The ember carrier hums in its clay. The coals in the shallow ring breathe like small animals sleeping. The wind changes once at shoulder height and back again, carrying a memory of water you have already crossed. When your eyes close, the day's map unspools under the lid's river line, basin, circle, thorn knot, boar's sidestep, the lone pale stone, and its song. You feel where each was in your feet. Tomorrow will draw itself over this one, not erasing but layering, to pale bone, and then to the faint gold that makes even the driest grass look alive. The air is cool enough to raise the skin along your forearms, but you know it will not stay. The wind belongs to no direction yet. It tests each path with equal weight. The tracker stands at the ridge's split. To the left, an animal road curves toward a stand of seasonal trees you've used before shade. Perhaps early fruit, but also the high likelihood that other feet, human or otherwise, have bent the grass flat there. To the right, a newer line, faint, wider between prints, edging along a drier shoulder where thorn and stone keep closer company. You read both as if they were faces. The left smells faintly of damp bark on the wind. The right holds the sharper dust scent of untouched ground. The younger one's eyes go first to where the animal road offers the comfort of the known, then to you, waiting to see which way your weight leans. Quirky fact: some trackers will taste a pinch of soil from each path before choosing, not for flavor, but to feel the grit and moisture on the tongue, the way you might test it between finger and thumb. The elder shifts the gourd at her hip, a subtle reminder of what you carry and what it costs to gather. The toolmaker tilts his head toward the right-hand track, as if already anticipating the stone you might find there. They will go where you draw the line. You kneel and press your palm to the right-hand path. The heat it gives back is last night's, not yet replaced by the sun. Fewer feet have moved here, which means fewer eyes waiting where it leads. You rise and angle your chin that way. The tracker marks the choice by pressing his heel into the dirt, once a sign you'll both recall later if the map needs retelling. Asterisk, asterisk. Mainstream fact to listen. Asterisk, asterisk. In many foraging societies, route decisions are made without formal speech through weight shifts, eye lines, and pauses, allowing movement to stay. Quiet in landscapes where sound travels farther than you want it to. You set off along the drier shoulder. The light slants low at your back, making long shapes ahead that bend and sway with each step, like scouts sent before you. The younger one walks close, glancing up at the ridge's angle, down at the track's curve, and occasionally at the 3 pebbles they kept from last night. Step, scan, listen. Each choice becomes part of the map behind your eyes, the ridge split, the lean of wind. The memory of last water stitched into the fabric of all the days before it. This is how the land is learned, not in a single journey, but in the layers of hundreds, painted over each other until they are one. By the time the sun tips its first warmth onto your shoulder, the band has stretched into its shape again. Vision. Overlapping feet balanced in the groove between caution and purpose. Ahead is only more ground, more sky, more to remember. Behind is a trail so light the wind can take it in an afternoon. You've carried the band from the reed-walled shelter by the river's bend, through the patient afternoons of tool-making, into the gold hours of pursuit and the long night watches. You've felt roofs rise from sticks, grass, and clay, fires banked against storms, the taste of food hunted and gathered together, the careful crossing of rivers that change their mind overnight. You've traced maps in dust, on forearms, in the rhythm of your own feet, maps made of smoke, smell, wind, tilt, right at the ridge. Pause when the grass stilled, the land has layered itself into you and you into it. The day's work was not just moving, but noticing, a kernel of shade worth stopping for, the feel of stone ready to open into an edge, the long chorus of night learning the shape of your watch. Now the ground is quiet under you. The embers huddle in their small clay nest. Breath by breath, the horizon has folded shut, leaving only the soft weave of sleep stretching out ahead. The map will still be there in the morning, waiting in your bones. For now, the path is only 2. Close your eyes, let the rhythm of the day ebb, and drift safe inside the circle of firelight into the long, unbroken dark. Good night.